Well, there's still so many questions surrounding the circumstances of the death of Lindani Myeni. The father of two from KwaZulu-Natal was shot dead by police in Honolulu, Hawaii, 2 weeks ago. Police were responding to a burglary call when the incident happened. Myeni's remains, of course, are being repatriated to South Africa. And I'm joined now from Honolulu by the family lawyer, Jim Bickerton. Mr. Bickerton, thank you so much for joining us from Honolulu. Information seems fairly patchy. What is your understanding of what actually happened that night, and where are the missing gaps of information?
Well, thanks. It's a very good question. And I think part of the problem is the patchiness of the information, because people are just shown the moment when Lindani is defending himself against unknown assailants, and he is valiantly fighting. And then that's characterized as an assault on police officers. And by not telling us exactly what came before, they're obscuring the real facts. We have uncovered a fair amount of information, and they're concealing other information. Let me give you an example. This was an important day for Lindani. He was reflecting on some major changes in his life, and he told his wife he needed to find a place to clear his head and meditate or collect his thoughts. Right next door to this property, which was not a burglary, by the way. That's another falsehood that's being perpetrated by the police. A burglary requires a forced entry. It requires people not to know that you're coming in. He entered in the plain presence of other people. He drove up in his car. He removed his shoes. He went in the wrong building. There's a temple right next door. So that's an important fact for people to understand. We also don't know from his phone, because we don't have his phone, they won't turn it over, what his last Google search was. What if, for example, he typed in the address of the temple and Google Maps sent him in a way that made him enter the house next door? We don't know these things. What we do know about Lindani is he was literally a Boy Scout. He was a camp counselor for Boy Scouts as well. He was an Eagle Scout, as I understand it. He was a peaceful, law-abiding person with a good intention and a good purpose. Anyone in that situation should not end up dead. And the questions that we have around that are, how did it happen? What's also important to understand is that these homeowners, when they apparently talked to Lindani before he went back outside to put his shoes on, we don't know if they made him aware that they intended to call the police. So you have a gentleman, Lindani is outside putting on his shoes, getting back to his car, trying to find the place he really wants to be at, and the police come to surprise him. They come without lights, without sirens, noiselessly. It's called a roll-up, and they entered silently, and then the first he becomes aware of it, there are intense tactical lights being shone in his face, and no one's saying that they are the police. So as far as he knows, the people in the house have sent their friends or vigilantes or security to accost him, and they're coming at him and pointing a gun in the flashlight beam and shining the blinding light in his face and shouting, "Get on the ground," which is a very dangerous place to be if that's not a police officer.
Yeah.
So naturally, we think what happened made sense, and we think that the police made a gross error in approaching someone in the dark with tactical lights without saying that they were the police, with their weapons drawn.
Have these police officers been arrested?
No, they haven't. It's extremely rare for police officers to be arrested. They do have the argument that once he attacked them, once in self-defense, he resisted, and he was a strong guy, and so he was getting the better of them physically. He was unarmed. And so they shot him because of the alleged fear of injury from him. The prosecutor is going to review the case and may or may not bring some kind of charge. But there are charges even from the very beginning. For example, drawing a firearm on someone and telling them to lie on the ground without explaining why or saying that you're a police officer is the crime of terroristic threatening or reckless endangering. That's a crime.
Can I ask you a little bit about, we understand that the body cam footage it's not the full picture. So how do you know that they didn't say they were police? Are there eyewitnesses? Have you found some information about the fact that they didn't, you say, identify themselves as police?
Well, it is on the cam, and there is only one officer who first engages Lindani. It's quite obvious. And the police have actually admitted at the first press conference they were asked whether they identified, and they said, no, we didn't, but he knew. And I asked the question, how did he know? How would you know at night? It was a moonless night, and these lights, you may or may not be familiar with tactical lights. They're not like the kind of flashlight you get to go look for stuff in your garage. These are intense lights that are designed to light up entire areas on a dark night, and also designed to make it very difficult for the people placed in the light to see. There's another principle which I experience all the time if I'm working late at night looking at a computer screen, and then I leave my computer and go into a dark room. It's really hard to see.
Yeah.
So once you shine that light in someone's face, they can see literally nothing. He wouldn't see badges, he wouldn't see anything unless it was right in the flashlight beam.
All right, so you're the family lawyer acting on behalf of Lindani Myeni, his widow. What actions are you taking? Have you opened a case? What's the next step?
We have opened a case, and we often wait to open these cases, but we opened one within a week of Lindani's death precisely because the city was ignoring the public records requests for basic information. We wanted to hear the 911 tapes where the entry into the home was reported, to see if it was actually reported as a burglary or if the parties told the truth about the entry. We want to see whether they told the police that he was aware they were coming. You know, people can sort of, one person could say to another, you distract him while I go and call the police from the kitchen. You know, those are the kinds of things we want to find out. We couldn't find them out through the normal channels of public information requests, which normally are granted. And so we initiated the lawsuit so that we could have access to records and materials. We do have subpoena power now that we have the lawsuit going. The lawsuit is based on a very simple common law principle that you may not point a gun at someone and order them to lie on the ground without identifying who you are. To do so is simply an assault, and it's unprivileged. And so Lindani was subjected to this. He was a strong and fearless person. At night, he's being confronted by strangers, armed, and ordering him on the ground. You have to recognize that if someone doesn't say they're police, you can't assume they are not the police, because of course the police are going to say, stop, police, freeze.
I have to ask you, Mr. Bickerton, Lindani Myeni spoke to our channel and she said she is convinced that if he were white, this would never have happened. Hawaii, of course, is part of the USA, but it's far away from the USA. And I'm just wondering if those issues around racism in the police force and the way black people are treated so differently to white people, is that a real problem in Hawaii as well? Is that a factor that you might be looking into?
Absolutely, we are looking at that, and I certainly believe that to be the case here, that race did play a role. I will point out that there's actually been studies of arrests and stops by the Honolulu Police Department, and persons of African ancestry and of Micronesian ancestry, which is another small minority that is discriminated against frequently in Hawaii. People from Micronesia, as well as people of African ancestry, are arrested and stopped at much higher rates proportionally to other races. So that has been a long-term problem with the Honolulu Police Department. And the immediate problem here, I think, is that they didn't feel he was worthy of announcement. To simply say, sir, we're the police. What are you doing here? And he could explain himself and say, look, I'm in the wrong spot. I was looking for the temple. Whatever the story is, we don't know exactly. Yeah. What we do know is that it wasn't a burglary, and he did not attack them. They attacked him. Those are the two, you know, they say a lie is halfway around the world before the truth has even got his boots on. And that's two of the things that we really need to rebut in this narrative. I think a reason why we don't see as much protest around this is that people are wondering, well, he was fighting with the police. What happened? And people aren't sure. And the Honolulu Police Department wants to keep it that way. They want to withhold the evidence so they can control the narrative. and not let people really understand what happened here.